up, guys? This is Rowdy here with the Homeway Hustle podcast. And today we have an incredible long-term friend of mine, Nick Harmeier here. Man, appreciate you being here, sir.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so man, Nick has been a big mover and shaker in the city for a long time, but he's so humble. He's not gonna tell you any of that. So I'm gonna have to extract it out of him today. So man, what's it been like? What's it been like growing up in Memphis, man?
Man, it's one of those. It's a love-hate.
Yeah.
There's so many things I love about this city, but there's so many things that are just so slow to happen in this city. So for a few years I lived outside of Memphis, and I lived in South Florida. I lived in Houston, and I'm originally, my first 12 years of my life was in Nashville, but Memphis, there's just a culture to it.
Yeah.
There's just soul to it. I mean, that's always kind of the word to use here. But seeing some of these other cities and coming back home, it's like, man, Memphis has the ability to thrive and just take off because it does have something that no other city has. But seeing where it just kind of continues to get pulled back.
What is it you think that we have that other places don't really have?
Again, it's just one of those words.
Is
It's
it
just the grit.
It's just like people that live here, we hate it, but it's ours. It's home.
Well, I wouldn't say that I hate the city. It's just,
but
just things that are simple fixes. Just as being a business guy, one of your biggest things is just fixing problems. So when you look around the city and you're like, man, you see these problems and they feel really big, and some of them are really big. I mean, you look at the education department here is a big problem. How do you fix it? But
the state just took over the schools.
Yeah. I send my kids to private school, but I went to school at Craigmont in my senior year. I went to White Station, two big different schools. But again, it's one of those things to where I understand the importance of education.
Yeah.
And it sucks because there's a lot of kids out here that are never going to have that opportunity to go to a nicer school.
I think it's one thing is like us as entrepreneurs, like we live our lives trying to make things better for everybody.
Right.
And so to see, I know for me to see, underprivileged kids or wherever that, they don't have access to a good education, like that, and then to see it, and then to see the drama with the school board that was just going down, it doesn't make sense,
Yeah, it's just really sad, And again, it's like you see these kids, and somewhere throughout our life, there was something that opened our eyes, whether it was a person, whether it was a visit somewhere. But I remember going to University of Memphis when I was maybe a junior in high school and thinking, oh my goodness, this is wild. This is what a college campus is like. And, that was kind of an eye-opening moment for me. And, I don't know if there's going to be a lot of kids in this city that get opportunities like that.
Yeah, for sure. So growing up in Memphis, moving around, I guess this is where this is where you kind of built yourself. So what led you to be, what was your first step into entrepreneurship?
It probably sounded like airheads and blow pops in high school.
Oh, you were the candy kid?
I was one of the candy. We had many of them.
I didn't know that.
So, but that's where you learn promotions really well, when you had multiple people battling up against you.
Yeah. Man, I remember, there was kids in high school that they made money. They were going to Costco and Sam's every week, stocking up, and they kind of had to keep it on the deal. The teachers got, but they never stopped them. They kept on doing it. I saw on Steve Harvey or somewhere one time, this kid had set up, he had salesmen at multiple different schools.
That's all new level.
That was wild. How would you, I could get it controlling if you had some salesman at your school, but how would you even, you have to be the ultimate salesman, the ultimate entrepreneur to be able to say, no, you're going to sell candy for me. Instead, because they could go to They could, I guess they could go to Costco and get the same candy.
Not really, because some of them, like I wasn't able to go to it. The kid who lived down the street from me, his mother had a Sam's membership. My mom and dad didn't have a Sam's membership, so when she would go to Sam's, I would tag along with them and I would go buy
Yeah.
the Airheads and Blow Pops.
That's awesome.
And, you know, there were weeks when I missed the bus on it and didn't have Airheads and Blow Pops. So.
Yeah. So that was, I guess that answered my next question. Like I guess that was your first gig.
I guess it was that and like cutting grass.
Yeah.
My brother and we used to cut yards together, which half the time we would fight and probably not even complete
You're
the
weed eating
yards.
today. I'm cutting. You know?
Yeah. So,
So what do you think that taught you?
I mean, just if you want to make money, you got to work for it.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, it was, you know, you get what you give.
Yeah. Yeah. There's nothing, you know, and especially there's no book to go read to learn how to be the candy salesman. That's something you had to come up with that on your own.
Yeah. I always think I was pretty well with my negotiating skills just from having 3 older brothers.
Yeah.
So just to stay alive, I was negotiating day to day.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, when you're an entrepreneur and a salesperson, you gotta, you know, like you said, you can negotiate not to get your butt kicked every day.
Yeah.
Or you know, to how to, not get left off of dinner with 3 older brothers gonna go in and eat first. You might be eating ramen noodles.
Yeah, I was left out quite a bit.
If you don't play your cards right. Yeah. So after what did you do after high school?
So after high school, you know, my first semester I didn't do anything. I ran around like an idiot.
Yeah.
And I found out pretty quickly that I wanted to try college out, and I went to school. And I love college. Yeah. So when I first jumped into school, I went to UT Martin, and my mom's like, "How do you like it?" I was like, "I love it." And she was like, "You know, all right, well, you need to kind of figure it out a little bit, you know, moving forward."
Yeah.
So with that being said,
talking about paying your tuition and living expenses and everything.
Well, when I first went to UT Martin, like they took care of me my first semester as far as put me up. I got a little dorm. They paid my tuition, and then they were like, "All right, you got to figure it out moving forward."
Yeah.
And so I was like, "Well, there's nowhere to work in Martin." I was driving to Dyersburg to work at Applebee's.
Yeah.
And that just didn't make sense. So I moved back to Memphis and took
Martin, unless you want to go process chickens, there ain't a whole lot to do with it.
Yeah. There was like a landscape yard or something that I went to go work out for a minute. But
I remember one of my football coaches, he went to Martin, and that's what he did. He worked at Tyson.
Yeah.
While he was in college, and he said that was a rough job.
Yeah.
Stinky.
I didn't do that, but I ended up going and getting a student loan, and I looked at that. I was like, man, I'm going to be broke, and by the time I get out of college.
Yeah.
So that's when I started doing the parties. I started doing parties, and I teamed up with Twitch from 93X.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, man, this is a no-brainer. And so we started doing these parties, and we do usually about 2 a semester, and that paid for school.
Yeah. So where were you throwing these parties at? At Martin or Memphis?
No, this is moving back to Memphis. So I moved back to Memphis because I was like, I have to be able to work.
Oh, I got you. Yeah, I understand.
And with that being said, I took out a student loan. After my first semester of taking out a student loan, I was like, if I keep this up, I'm going to be broke by the time I get out.
I didn't. When I was in college, I wasn't that smart. Like whatever. When I went on online and fill out my thing, whatever the max they would give me every semester, that's what I was getting.
You talking about for student loan?
Hell yeah.
Well, that's what I did my first semester. I was like,
Grants
this is great. But I didn't know anything about grants or I mean, it's just college was super expensive. So I started doing the parties. And we would just I'd find random warehouses.
Yeah.
And random warehouses, random spots. Like we did a roller disco party at the old Skateland on Summer Avenue. Yeah. One time we did a big pool party at Prince Mongo's castle that had been closed for a number of years.
You know, I was at the Rowdy Skateland last weekend. They turned it into an event center now.
I saw that.
Yeah. That was crazy. When one of my guys was for his daughter's quinceanera, and I looked at the address and I pulled it up on Google and it said Rowdy Skateland. And I was like, there's no way. And then when we got there close enough, I was like, well, I guess that's what it is. It's kind of crazy, nostalgic.
Funny enough, when I was the first party we threw, it was that semester I paid my down payment like in January, and it was coming up in like March or April for my second payment for tuition, and we were planning this big Cinco de Mayo party, and I was like, man, we need to do something now because I have to make this payment. So we did Ocho de Marcho.
Oh,
And I mean,
that's
same
funny.
theme.
Yeah,
And we did it at this old warehouse downtown.
yeah. So what like on these like how many people were coming to these parties?
I mean, it was anywhere from 700 to 2,500.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how were y'all keeping them from like getting because they obviously weren't established, ABC permit parties.
Yeah.
Like, how did y'all keep from getting shut down?
I mean, I did get arrested at one party. At the final party I threw, I got busted for not having a dance permit.
Yeah.
And that's what they got me for. And we had about 2,500 people at that. It was a big Halloween party. And
That is insane.
yeah, it was huge. But, it was one of those things too. I remember when the guy was arresting me, he had me in front of everybody. So everybody's like exiting the party, the police officer. And so everybody's exiting. I'm on the police car and he's going through like a yellow page size book trying to figure out what he was.
law?
Yeah, which there were probably plenty of other laws he could have got me
yeah.
for, but that's what he got me for was.
But
it made me kind of notorious after that. Everyone was like, "Man, that was wild."
Yeah, like Project X over here.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in Jeremy Allen, we threw a party. We threw a glow party downtown at one of the what was that place that Rob Coletta had the where he let all the bands come practice at. What was
Somebody, like in Midtown?
it was kind of
Tampa?
down. It was kind of down.
Campus or something like that?
No, it was like downtown behind Redbird Stadium.
Oh, that's top 3, 4, 5?
No. This was like a warehouse. He made it. He made a bunch of rooms for bands to be able to come perform.
Oh, I know what
at.
you're talking about. I forgot what they called that.
Yeah, but Jeremy Allen threw a big glow party there, but he threw it the same night that one of those like touring glow parties had a party at Electric Cowboy.
Gotcha.
And so we're pretty sure that they snitched, and it was. I mean, he had to pay a lot of money.
Yeah.
Because like they like arrested and like the door guys for not having licenses, and like gave all the girls that were serving alcohol, like gave them ABC. It was a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that I've been a part of one of those getting
Yeah,
shut
see,
down.
we did run everything through like catering license.
Oh, okay.
And of course, Raul always worked our door. He was pretty tight. with all
Raul and Justin are ones that got in trouble that night.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah.
Well, Raul had a little more strength back then, I guess.
Yeah. He definitely got in trouble that time. So it was wild watching them get arrested. But yeah, that was crazy. So those parties. So where did you get the idea for V3?
So, I was doing quite a bit of stuff with Rampage Jackson at the time, and the FedEx Forum reached out to me about trying to get Rampage to come in, and they wanted to do this thing with state legislation. Michael Heisley, who owned the Grizzlies at the time, was a big UFC fan, and he wanted to bring UFC to the FedEx Forum. In the meantime, Mark Ratner and the whole crew with UFC was going state to state, legalizing it. And they were probably still in the Midwest on getting it legalized, and they were working their way east. But Tennessee, thanks to Michael Heisley and Steve Zito and Melissa Bast, really were the pushing force to legalize it in the state of Tennessee.
Remember back in the day, like we used to, at the Daisy, they would have what they called combat jujitsu, where you could strike, but once you get on the ground, it was just grappling.
Yeah, and a lot of that stuff was going on, but it wasn't sanctioned.
Was that a loophole that they had found?
No, it just wasn't sanctioned.
Really?
At the end of the day, you could just do it. It wasn't really sanctioned. But that was kind of the tough part, too. Whenever it did get sanctioned, it kind of shut a lot of those shows down. Yeah. But it made it a lot safer, with that being said, too. So I saw how big it was out west, is what it is. When I was with Quentin, and we would see how big, going to these shows and stuff and see how big it was out there. And I was like, man, it's a no-brainer to do it here. Yeah. So I jumped on with a couple guys and started doing the fights, and then I was like, man, I'm just gonna start V3 and rolled into that.
And was there any other promotions in town at all? Were you kind of the first one?
No, there were, when I first started with it, I jumped on board so Cage Assault was doing kind of like the smoker shows before it was. Yeah.
Is Cage Assault, are they a national thing, or were they just here?
No, they were just here.
Okay.
They were here, and it was a couple guys, and they were doing it, and they were good guys too. They were doing some strong shows. It's just when I jumped on board with them, we did Minglewood Hall and we did FedEx Forum, and at the time they were doing them out at the Navy base. Yeah. So they were able to do the Navy base because it was like,
I remember those.
Federal land, I guess, or government land. So it wasn't. It was sanctioned. It didn't have to be sanctioned. So but it was more money to make there because you're not paying the biggest fee going to Minglewood Hall and FedEx Forum. But it's a different atmosphere when you go to Minglewood Hall or FedEx Forum.
Yeah.
So needless to say, we kind of butted heads with, I was like, hey, let's keep doing them at these, at these established venues rather than just doing it at a airplane hangar.
Yeah.
And so they wanted to do the hangar, and I was like, all right, well, I'm just going to roll and do my own thing. And then I started V3 Fights. But with that being said, I saw how successful I was with the parties.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, this is a great transition doing these.
Yeah, we're an adult.
Fights.
We're an adult now. We got
right. I didn't want to be running around, throwing parties for, early 20s when I'm in my late 20s at this point.
Yeah. So where'd you get the idea? So what did V3, it's the Vini Vidi Vici. So what was the idea behind that?
Man, I was just always a Julius Caesar. I was just always kind of a history buff. I loved history. And so when I was, I think of like the Colosseum and, you should think of like gladiator fights. Yeah. And so when I was just kind of reading some stuff about Julius Caesar and the whole Vini Vidi Vici, my understanding, I could be completely wrong, is that someone rised up against him to show his strength. He went and conquered another country, came back to, to Congress, I guess, or whatever, and was like, hey, Vini Vidi Vici. I came, I saw, I conquered. Yeah. So, Yeah,
that's a pretty good. That's a pretty good.
So I kind of like the whole thing with the fight piece on that. So I just did V3 Fights, and everyone kind of did ultimate this or fighting this or championship this. And I was like, man, I kind of want to set myself apart a little bit and just do V3 Fights. I wasn't trying to be UFC by any means. I just wanted to be a cool little fight circuit.
Build something, give an opportunity for a lot of young guys to come in and show what they did. So what do you think set V3 apart from your, other than the name? Like, what do you think set them apart from other regional companies?
I mean, it was just our culture. Like, we had a really cool culture. You came to a fight, it was like coming to a party. But, we spent a lot of time with the atmosphere and the experience and making it immersive and making it a lot of fun. Yeah. But, it was the lighting, it was the sound, it was the fights. It was. It
wasn't just a room and a ring. It was a full production.
Well, back then, too, it was a little difficult, too, because the scene was so new that a lot of people that were putting on fights were also gym owners. Yeah. So when that was happening, people were always like, well, they're putting all their guys up against easy guys, so making it easy wins. So we're like, well, we could be a third party coming in here doing this thing. Yeah. And that way there's no like bias, and it's, it takes out that out of the whole equation.
Yeah, there's some, we used to have some wild nights up there for sure.
Man, and that was it. Like the weigh-ins were cool, and then you roll into the fights, and then you roll into the after party. Yeah. And I remember those. But I remember like, we would do this and we'd bring out, different guys like Herb Dean and I remember our first couple fights were on HD Net. And this is what I love about this age that we're in, is when that was happening, I remember seeing HD Net fights. I was like, man, I wonder if I can get on there. So I'm like finding Mark Cuban's email address, find it, email him. He sends an email back saying, hey, reach out to Andrew Simon. So I reach out to Andrew Simon, who was the president of HD Net.
Was that like a streaming service?
It was on Access TV, which
I remember that.
Mark Cuban owned Access TV, and it was part of their channel. So
you emailed Mark Cuban directly?
Yeah, and he got back to me within 24 hours. So when people are like, man, I'm just too busy, I'm like, dude, Mark Cuban emailed me back.
Do you think it was actually him or somebody?
No, I think it was definitely him.
Really?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, again, this was probably 20 years ago, so I'm sure people are getting a lot more emails today than they were. Junk emails today than they were.
And it's probably something he was actually interested in. It wasn't like, hey, I want to meet you is a business deal. And
it was just like, hey, I'm interested about doing this. He was like, hey, put me in contact with Andrew Simon. Yeah. And then we had our first 3 fights when we were at Newbies on HD Net Fights. Yeah. So, and Boss Rutan's like, these are the best kind of fights that are in these little...
So I may have not been around. I may have not been to those. So they were at the Newbies on the stage side?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, we went in there, and it's funny.
R.I.P. Newbies. Shout out to Skinny.
It took me like 30 minutes to talk Todd Adams into easily 30 minutes. I had to sit because I hit him up. I was like, hey, I want to do fights at Newbies. He's like, absolutely not. Yeah. And I was like, and so I found him up there. I was like, hey, I'm telling you, this is what we got going on. Da, da, da. And he was like, all right, finally, after, chatting with him for 30 minutes, he's like, we can do it. We'll see how it goes. And, 15 minutes into the first fight, he was like, dude, when's the next one? He's like giving beers to everybody. He's just me and Todd Adams, just like passing beers to everyone. And he stayed with us, until my last event with V3. Like he was always coming to our fights. He was a huge supporter. He was just a great ambassador for us.
Yeah, we used to throw a lot of parties at Newbies too. Me and Jeremy are playing parties and stuff, and they were always. Newbies is the perfect place to have a rowdy party because it was just you knew what you were getting. It's gonna be kind of funky and kind of dirty, but we're gonna have a lot of fun.
Dude, it was definitely kind of dirty.
yeah, man. Any venue that lets you come in and squirt paint everywhere or fill the entire room up with foam.
Yeah,
we had a foam party there.
Yeah, they probably needed a couple foam parties there.
Yes,
I cleaned it out a little bit.
I think it smelled better after the party was over than before we got there.
The hard part was that floor wasn't level; it was an angle, so we had to build an octagon cage in the construction world, you can understand this, in a
platform
and it wasn't. So let me back up. Our very first fight was at Delta Fair.
Yeah.
And very first fight, first minute of the fight, first round, when we built the cage, my brother was building the cage for us at the time, and he was like, dude, they built this cage wrong. It should have this piece in the door. I was like, dude, these guys built hundreds of cages. They've been building wrestling rings.
You trusted, but you didn't verify.
And he was like, well, it's fine unless it gets hit at this exact point, it should be fine. I was like, all right, first minute, first round, first fight. The dude shoves the dude right into that door at the perfect spot, and the door flies open. The guy flies out, and I was like, oh my gosh, here we go. Yeah. So fast forward to our second show, we're at Newbies, and Adam's like, and that's my brother, and he's like, dude, what are you doing? Like, we're building this platform up. The cage is trying to get as steady as possible.
Yeah.
Easily, it could have knocked over and just been a total nightmare.
Yeah.
So
was the guy okay?
Yeah, he was okay.
That was oh man, that would scare the shit out of me.
Yeah, he landed on his feet. Thankfully, it was some lightweights.
Yeah, if it's one of us, the big boys in there, it might have been different.
Yeah, luckily he landed on his feet. Someone in his corner up to him, we're gonna sue unless you give us $80. And I was like,
$80.
Here's 100. Sign this napkin.
Exactly.
I was like, I don't think this serves anything.
So in business, we all take, there's risks assumed with everything. Whether you're doing construction or stuff. And I imagine that's a pretty risky business. You got, especially back when you first started, it wasn't as big as it is now. Probably have a lot of people like in high places, maybe not, especially in the government, like not really supported. So what were some of the challenges that you faced, like both, through insurance and getting the government on board with being able to have those events?
Well, so, we were lucky that, in the state of Tennessee, it was sanctioned and we didn't have to put any money up for that. It was sanctioned through Michael Heisley. And I think the UFC probably put a little bit of money behind it too, because they wanted to bring events to Tennessee. So the sanctioning piece with the government wasn't a ton on us.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of cost involved. It's any startup. But the beauty of this business was all the cost came the day of the event.
Yeah.
So at least a bulk of them, 20% of the cost, could be beforehand of like maybe some down payment for the venue and buying insurance and so forth. But if my fight did bad, or if I didn't do good on sponsorships the day of, I was, drinking a lot of whiskey.
He tried.
I will say there was only one fight that I was super worried about, and it was Trip Carter. He knocked out somebody, and we had insurance through this company out of Kentucky, and everything went great. The fight was like, great fight, great night of fight, huge knockout at the end. The guy has to get taken off in an ambulance because we were taking every precaution. We were obviously, at that time too, we were at FedEx Forum. So all that stuff gets handled. And the next day I hit up the insurance company. I'm like, hey, had this issue, send it off. The guy had to get a CAT scan, everything. Well, it turned out it was a bogus insurance company. And I'd been working with this insurance company for probably, 8 to 10 fights.
What do you mean they were bogus? So they weren't an actual insurance company?
Well, the agent I was working with wasn't submitting the money. he was just pocketing the money.
Oh.
So I guess he was just giving me fake documents. So with that being said, I was
scary.
I had almost $30,000 worth of medical bills I had to pay for this person out of my pocket because I couldn't leave it all on the fighter.
Yeah.
And, it was my responsibility as a promoter. So that was probably a pretty, I remember submitting it to the state and I was like, hey, this guy did this. We all know who it is. You need to shut him down. He's still doing these across the board with other people. I'm not sure what really came of it, but needless to say, we started going through very legit insurance agencies.
You go to
after
Grange
that.
Insurance or something like that. Yeah. We had, I wasn't super a part of it, but remember the fake Mac Miller show? Do you remember that?
No.
You remember it was at City Hall? So there was Castle Entertainment. They brought me and Donald on board to like help them promote it, and they were promoting a Mac Miller show at City Hall in Cordova, and they got somebody they were sending fake drops like for radio and all kinds of stuff, and then people started you started seeing social media buzz
going on.
pretty much. Luckily I wasn't like I just kind of shared. I wasn't like super involved in it, so I didn't really catch a whole lot of backlash off of it. It was like Castle Entertainment who really threw it, but it started like getting the social media around like this is fake. I don't see it on this website anywhere. And couldn't have found out it was the same thing, but it was a fake promoter, and he'd been doing it a lot. He'd been selling people fake shows.
Man, that's wild.
Yeah, and I don't know how much those guys lost, but it's probably in that But by the time all the money that they sent him and all the costs involved with people buying tickets and having to give tickets back and all that stuff, it was $30,000-$40,000 that they lost as well, which is terrifying. I couldn't imagine we come up against costs all the time like that, but I've never had to deal with that before. So what was your favorite show that you ever did with V3? Like, what was the biggest one that?
I mean, the biggest one was obviously, probably when we had Dana White, and Penny, and Mike Miller, that whole thing for looking for a fight was definitely.
I remember that.
The biggest show, but that was the cool thing about that is everything we did for that whole week is we had Dana and his team wrestling on Bill Street, then we had our weigh-ins, and we just did all sorts of stuff that entire week with that whole crew. But my favorite shows were always Father's Day weekend. Those were always my favorite shows. I lost my father. I started V3 in September, and my father passed away in October. Yeah. And he was a super hard worker, worked in the restaurant industry all his life. And so I always think, man, he would have loved to have seen these fights grow. And my brothers always supported it. My sister always supported it. So they always came to the fights, and always the Father's Day weekend show always felt kind of special to me. Yeah. And it was just always it was June. Yeah. Minglewood was always like 500 fucking degrees.
Yeah, it was.
And man,
Trey always,
every time they'd be like, "We got the air fixed for him." Like, all right, you promise? I promise. And then first it was JD, then it was Trey, and I was like, guys, please fix this air.
Old Trey D Hard, he forgot to pay the bill or something.
But it was just
come on, Trey.
Yeah. And it was one of those things to where I don't think they were shorting the air or anything. It's just, dude, it just gets hot in there.
You get 1,800 people in there, high strong.
1,800 people in there. It's 100 degrees outside. I get it. So
you get 1,800 people in affliction shirts drinking beer in the place. It gets man, those nights are always. That's like when, especially like the after parties at 152. Like we'd always bring in extra security because like you got all these people full. They've been drinking since 7 o'clock. Yeah. And they're all full of piss and vinegar. Testosterone's running through the sky. They've been at the fights all night.
And that's what I used to have to. I used to have to combat that with a lot of people because they're like, "Oh, people are gonna be fighting in the crowd."
No, but never.
No one really ever fought in the crowd.
Never.
But every once in a while, someone would pop off. But usually it was security that would be more amped up than it was.
Well, those guys are typically security guys. They don't always try to be peacekeepers.
Right.
They're looking for.
That's what I was saying. I would always have meetings with security before most events and be like, hey, talk down before you take down.
Yeah. You're here to be like, I forget we're support, we're floor staff. Yeah. Not security or security. Cause you tell them they're customer service. That's how you tell security guards. You're a customer service.
Yeah, always loved it though. Whenever we would do the 152 after parties, because Kelly Potter would always I'd always get one or two people as just like personal bodyguards, and just put them with like a few people, like a few of the VIPs, and we would make them feel like so superior and stuff. Of like, so and so's gonna watch out for you guys. If you need to go to the bathroom, just because you go to Vegas. And you get like VIP at Vegas, and you got to go to the bathroom. Like security will walk you to the bathroom, and so it was always cool to bring some of those little pieces of flair to.
So who are some of the big names that came up through the promotion that are still out there today, or maybe word got out?
I mean, one of the biggest ones right now, and he still does a good job of keeping his name out there too. But he's still a really good fighter. Is Bryce Mitchell? Yeah. He had his first fight for us, and his last fight before we made him to the UFC with us.
I remember he would pack it. I mean, there'd be 100 pissed off Arkansas rednecks.
Bryce
in that crowd,
was not the big name. Wade Johnson was the big name, and Wade was like Bryce's older brother. Yeah, and Wade
they come out of the same place.
Yeah, they came out of Willie's gym, and and I go back to
I forgot about Wade. Yeah,
a lot of credit to Chaney Wason. was the man on matchmaking. He was so far ahead on talent and really finding good people. The problem is we gave such a good platform that some people their ego got too big too quick, because there's a couple fighters that could have really blown up. Yeah,
I saw Wade. I mean, I went with Jacob Noe to it's a really sad weekend for me. It's the weekend my mom passed away, but I went with Jacob Noe to the bare knuckle fights in Jackson, Mississippi.
Yeah,
and I looked on the card and I saw Wade Johnson was fighting bare knuckle.
Yeah,
so that was pretty cool to I've seen him fight so many times for you.
Yeah,
it was pretty cool to go see him.
Man, he was just a good guy too.
Yeah, but I remember him and him and Bryce there would always be a lot of people there for them, and they're both in their camo shorts.
Trip Carter. Yeah, I mean he was one that kind of like brought us into. It's funny, when we first started the fights, we were putting them on, and a lot of the Memphis guys wouldn't fight for us. So, I was like, fuck it. We'll go to Arkansas, just bring in all the fighters from Arkansas. So we couldn't get any of the guys from Memphis and couldn't get most of the Mississippi guys. And so we started bringing in all the Arkansas guys. Yeah. And we kind of built a crowd around that. And, and then whenever we started seeing the coverage we were getting and how cool the events were, it kind of rolled.
I remember when Tripp fought Aaron Meadows at the Cannon Center.
Yeah, that was a cool venue.
Yeah, it was. Having it right up on having the cage right up there at the stage, and I was on the stage at that. So that was pretty cool. But I remember Tripp coming out. He'd gotten somebody to he had his own rap entrance song.
Xavier.
Tripp Carter. And then I'm not talking shit, Tripp, and then Aaron knocked him the fuck out.
Well, it's funny too, because I think of like so many people we worked with still with V3 and their success beyond it. So even with that being said, I remember we did a contest of someone could write a song for V3, and whoever did it, we would create a music video for them. And so I think it's Xavier Murphy, or I think that was his last name, Murphy or Murray. I think it was Murphy. Did it, and it was a great song. So we had Joe Gotti, who did a bunch of now he's a huge video producer, and he's based in Atlanta, but he does everybody. Like he does Lil Wayne. I mean, just
a lot of big people.
Very big in the hip hop scene. And we had Joe Gotti shoot the video, and it was super cool. It's still out there on YouTube somewhere.
YouTube's forever.
But now it's just wild seeing the success Joe Gotti has had now. Obviously, it was nice to just be a little piece of it. But he's another great guy we worked with. And then you have someone like Kidron Cannon that used to do a lot of video work for us, and now he's doing a bunch of video work for UFC. Then our first production guy that we did a lot of production with was Jeremy Bird, and now he's the one that has created all the LED panels for UFC. So when you see the LED going around the camera stands or the LED on the catwalk, Jeremy Bird and his team with Elite Multimedia created all that stuff.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. It's crazy seeing being in. I remember seeing the first, like, This was years ago. Me and Donald Hines built a TV. We went to Best Buy and bought a whole bunch of 39-inch TVs, and we fabricated this TV wall. And then
Yeah.
like 2 years later, it's completely obsolete because now you have full LED screens.
Yeah.
I mean, this was in like 2011 or 12 when we built this thing, so it was a long time ago. But it was cool as shit then. It's having 8 TVs up there, but it was just nobody had done that before that we had seen.
Yeah.
So it was just seeing it grow. But so you've built up V3. It's going good, and then you make the decision to exit. So talk about what did you do to position the company to be able to sell it?
I mean, it was just relationships. I made a lot of good relationships. So when I was moving, I moved to South Florida, I moved to Houston.
Yeah.
I'd always reach out to promotions down there, and I was like, hey, you need anything, I live here. I was still doing fights back in Tennessee. But when I was in Houston, I reached out to the guy down there who was doing legacy fights, and it was Mick Maynard. I was like, if you ever need anything, let me know. I work over here at the soccer stadium. Yeah. And he had a print company. And so I set him up with the arena, and he started doing some print stuff for them. And then I was really good with digital marketing at the time, so I was able to help him on a couple of cheat codes that I'd learned from different bands here about with Facebook that you could use for inviting people and all this stuff.
I remember you just have to you have to download the plugin to be able to the invite all plugin.
Yeah.
I think I was probably one of the first people to find that.
Yeah.
And then they put it in. It was a little Google plug-in, and then Facebook made it a part of it, and then they took it away again.
Right. Well, there was also like codes you could drop in here and there on stuff, but anyways, I made a good relationship with Mick, and then so I'm still doing the fights. I'm kind of learning from his fights and doing whatever I can with him. And then when I'd come back and I'd see something cool at his fight, I'd bring it to my fight. But needless to say, he had someone hit him up about putting together a group and going public with a couple different fight companies. And so he reached out to me. He's like, dude, you need to get in on this. Like, you'd be a no-brainer. So I jumped in with it too with Alliance MMA. And, we had a conglomerate come in and just put, a number of different, I think it was 5 of us total, together on one platform. And take it public on NASDAQ.
Didn't you go ring the bell?
On NASDAQ.
That was pretty.
So I don't think it was it wasn't a bell on NASDAQ, but it was, I don't know if you pressed a button or whatever it was, but it was cool. I mean, we were on Times Square. It was all over the place.
Yeah. That's pretty cool.
It was a very, very cool experience.
But what was specifically, like, what did you do? Like, you built, like, not every company is sellable. So what did you do specifically to make this company to where somebody actually wanted to buy it?
It was an attractive brand.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it was like, I'm really good at branding. Yeah. So I can make it a very attractive brand. And then I always kept really clean books.
Yeah.
So when someone approached me, when I saw what happened with V3 and then I started Ultimate Foods.
Yeah.
But when I saw what was happening with V3, I was like, man, I need to clean my books up with Ultimate Foods.
Yeah.
At some point, someone's going to approach me and probably want to purchase it.
Yeah.
And, so I just always made sure that the branding was made it look bigger than it really was, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I guess most people's, most people that start a business, I'm very guilty of it. We're just now getting a real control and getting our stuff cleaned up too and get them done. They were never terrible, but they weren't good either. But now we have it legit. But I guess probably in the fight world, I mean, most people just sell tickets and they're paying everybody in cash and so that it's not a sellable brand because they can't prove their income, they can't prove what they've done, and they haven't built a brand. It's just we got to fight every 6 or 7 months and that's it.
Well, and you have to be very disciplined on a cash business too. So with the fights, especially when you're not doing it, when I'm doing it at Minglewood or I'm doing it at FedEx or facilities like that, they kind of hold you a little more accountable to your ticket count and using their box office. But if you're just selling tickets on the side, you can keep that cash. But it's real easy to, throw 500 here, 1,000 there, and the next thing you know, you're like, damn, I gave out $7,000 to I don't know what it went to. Yeah. So we were really disciplined on sticking to a P&L and sticking to a budget and executing from that.
Yeah. So because I think that's what makes a business. That's what makes a business sellable. Just making sure everything's right to where somebody else
it
can
has
come
to be
in.
profitable.
Exactly.
So,
profitable.
Yeah.
Profitable.
profitable.
Yeah.
So,
So, I mean, how hard was it? Hard to like? Was it hard to let it go, or was it you? Or did you feel in time it was your heart that it was time to let it go and let somebody else take the
no, I mean, it was kind of one of those things where I was just like super excited about selling business.
Yeah.
You know, when I go back to my father, you know, there was a time where my aunt was talking about my father and was like, you know, at one point he really wanted to start a restaurant, but he had 5 kids and it was just a little too much of a risk for him to do. So when I built V3 and then the opportunity was to go public, I'm like, dude, I'm going to go ring the bell. I'm going to be in New York. This thing's going to, you know, be on the stock market. Like, that was like the most attractive piece to it.
Yeah. Did that alliance thing, did that work out? Did that work out good for them?
I mean, it worked out good for me. I wouldn't say, you know, again, the issue with it, there was a number of factors that created that structure to fall apart.
Yeah.
So I left Alliance MMA, and that's when I went to the zoo. But it was falling apart pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But it was, again, they weren't, they were somewhat great at raising money, but they were really bad at spending money on.
They're just burning cash.
They were great at burning cash.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny. We talk
It's
about
fun.
this.
Burning cash is fun, man.
Yeah. I mean, but everybody's like flying first class everywhere. Everyone's taking, you know, Uber XL blacks everywhere. You know, it's, so.
Yeah. So did you still have V3 when you started Ultimate Foods?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was kind of the no-brainer piece on that, you know, and it goes back to this. I saw the concept when I was living in Houston.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, this concept's really cool. And then so when I moved back to Memphis, I was like, this is kind of a no-brainer to start up, and it tied in really well with.
So tell us about it. Like, what was it exactly?
What's that, Ultimate Foods?
Yeah.
So I saw the concept in Houston. It was called My Fit Foods, and it was you know, it was just prepackaged, pre-portioned, healthy meals, and you know, this is well before everybody wanted to know what was in their food. So you know, we had our ingredient list, we had the macros on it. You know, when I started Ultimate Foods, I started with Rick McCracken. He was really like big health nut, very good at cooking, you know, so it made a lot of sense to tie this thing into V3 because V3 had all these influencers, you know, these health influencers too. You know, most of these guys, most of these fighters are the health nuts of their little cliques and stuff too, of their social ring. So it was just a no-brainer. And so, you know, Ultimate Foods startup, we started cooking in a little commissary kitchen. Yeah. And, you know, and blew that thing up in 3 years.
How many locations did you get to?
5 locations, but the online store was the key piece.
Yeah, I remember. I mean, I used to buy stuff from there all the time.
Yeah.
That was good. I remember, you know, and so how did you get it to 5?
I mean, it just, I kept growing. I was obsessed with it. Yeah. So, you know, I probably should have just stuck with, I'd say 5. 5 includes online stores. So we had, you know, we had the downtown. We ended up closing the downtown store, but we had Mississippi, East Memphis, and then Cordova. Yeah.
Was Cordova, that was the kind of the flagship.
Cordova was the flagship. So that was the kitchen, and then we had the satellite stores. So I love the concept because you had your store where you cooked everything, and then you would go get 1,500 square feet, put in the refrigerators, and sell it there.
Would control it.
Yeah. So the controllables were extremely well put together, and I had a great chef who was a business partner too, and becoming a business partner, Jason Pauly. Yeah. And it was just a lot of fun working with him.
Yeah, Rick was an animal too, man. He was on the cover of Health and Fitness or is it just a Memphis one?
Yeah, the Memphis Health and Fitness.
Yeah, was he a big part in like helping it getting it like what part did you handle, the business part and he handled the kitchen part? Like,
yeah. So I handled a lot of the business part and he handled a lot of the kitchen part. Yeah. So you know, he understood too about, you know, people wanted to eat healthy, but they wanted to eat comfort foods also. Oh yeah.
I mean, there's like I remember you had like meatloaf and cheeseburger macaroni and all kinds of stuff like that. But it was all like But it was cheeseburger macaroni. You might not lose weight eating this stuff, but it was whole food. It was all real wheat. There wasn't no bullshit in it.
Well, a lot of it was gluten free, so we
Yeah.
would use a lot of gluten free pasta. But we also, the big piece was portion control. We really guided people.
Yeah.
Again, I hate to say it like this. It's not like we invented this whole thing. We saw the concept in Houston.
Yeah.
And like I said, I had grabbed it a handful of times when I was down there. So we kind of just saw what they were doing. We're like, man, we take this, put our own brand on it. Because I first looked at trying to franchise it. Yeah. And I was talking to a friend of mine. I was like, should I franchise it? And he was like, well, what's the cost of franchise? And I was like, I think $200,000. He's like, can you make all your mistakes for under $200,000? I was like, yeah. He's like, well, do that. No one knows the brand here.
Yeah.
So why don't you just, do your own?
Yeah.
And you don't have to pay a franchise fee.
Just keep it. Oh, you're talking about franchising the one in Houston.
Correct.
Oh, and grabbing it and bringing it up here.
Correct.
Oh, so you pay them $200,000 and they give you. And
I don't know if that was the cost on it or whatever. But at the end of the day, I was like, I could make all my mistakes for less than what it would cost to franchise it.
Yeah. Like we've talked about here, we're trying to build a sellable business without wanting to sell it right now.
Right.
And you think that's what's important about any business is making, scalable systems they're able to duplicate.
Right.
So how did you take all 4 of your stores and make sure they were all running the same? Because I just watched Founder. Have you watched Founder on Netflix? You should watch it. It's about how Ray Kroc stole McDonald's from the McDonald's brothers.
Oh yeah.
Oh, it's terrible, bro. It's like it'll make you never want to go eat McDonald's ever again because it's just he screwed them big time. But the brothers started the McDonald's brothers started the McDonald's thing. Came with the whole concept of the quick thing. Making burgers in 30 seconds. And they tried to franchise it. But every time they would, they may only franchise like 4 or 5 stores, but they were not selling just cheeseburgers and French fries and shakes and Cokes.
Yeah.
They started selling tacos and corn on the cob and things like that, and they were not. So how do you, as a business owner that's adding multiple locations, like obviously they're all in one city, so you could touch them more often. But if you're a business owner and you want to scale your business and be able to do it, how do you control the controllables and the non-controllables at each location?
I mean, you have to create a playbook, right? At the end of the day, you got to create a playbook and base it off that.
Yeah.
So, with Ultimate Foods, like I really wanted to take it to Nashville. It would have worked great in Nashville.
Oh, you'd be rich, man, if that was up there right now.
Yeah. So, and that was one of the things is, there was, after we started it down here, a group started up in Nashville and they went really fast, really quick, and they went out of business within 6 months. And so, I wanted to go and buy all their equipment because it was like, man, we could buy their equipment pennies on the dollar.
Yeah.
So, and that was kind of the play was I wanted to do one more in Collierville and then move to Nashville and start doing it in Nashville. But it's just creating that playbook and then utilizing technology. Yeah. The biggest piece that we were really successful with is we utilized technology.
Yeah.
Had I still had Ultimate Foods when COVID hit, I would have been, because we were delivering to homes. You could, pick up at the location. Like we were so far ahead of the game with the convenience part of it.
Yeah. Were there any mistakes that you made earlier?
There were a ton of mistakes.
Yeah.
There were a ton of mistakes. I got sued a couple of times. I got hit with fines a couple of times.
What'd you get sued for?
I got sued one time for my bathroom wall was like
I remember
a quarter
that.
inch.
I remember
off
that.
Not being handicapped. But that was lawyers. Just this one lawyer would go around the city.
I remember that.
And hit people.
It was
Another
a quarter
time I
inch too
got
far. Hey, so let's talk about that for a second because I remember what you did.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because what you did was so genius. Instead of because most people would have figured out how they're going to move the wall in.
Yeah.
What did you do?
I actually called Eubank and I was like, hey, I need you to get me a 3/4 inch piece of sheetrock and put it up and paint it.
So instead of that's what.
Well, because they were like, you need to move the toilet over. And I was like, I don't move the toilet over. So we went and put some sheetrock up and moved it over 3/4 of an inch.
Yeah, and it was in code.
And then I was like, put my measuring tape up and I was like, hey.
It was in code. Instead, that's what's crazy. They want you to move the toilet. They want you to move walls.
Yeah.
Instead, you're like, no, I'm just going to, you just put a double layer of sheetrock on it and painted it and that was the end of the day.
Yeah.
I remember you telling me about that story.
And then another time when we first started, we were subcontracting all of our workers because we didn't know anything about payroll to an extent. And so people would come in and work 20 hours. We'd write them a check and be like, all right, here's,
I did done it.
here you go. Yeah. Well, what happened is we gave them all shirts of Ultimate Foods to wear if they wanted to wear them. We wanted them to wear them because it looked cool. It was like, dang, you're in this commissary kitchen. People are like, Ultimate Foods is rolling in this thing. Got 7, 8 people working. Yeah. Well, with that being said, someone at the end of the year got hit with their taxes. And when they got hit with their taxes, they were like, hey, you didn't pay any of my taxes. I'm like, well, you actually pay your taxes. We weren't withholding it. I was like, but you can, pay your taxes, right? And then so they went to the labor board, and the labor board hit us with like a $12,000 fine. And $12,000 at that time was, devastating. And so I already wasn't even paying myself anything with Ultimate Foods when my first year of it. So it was, that was a pretty hard.
Yeah, there was another restaurant in town, and the guy was a decent acquaintance of mine. I've known his family his whole life, but he kind of, I don't know if he was ignorant or trying to maybe skirt around the law a little bit, but he was paying people cash. Yeah. And then COVID came around, and he had to let some people go, and they all went to go file unemployment, and they were like, "Yeah, man, we don't know what you're talking about. You didn't have a job." And they're like, "Well, I've been working at this place forever, or for how long?" I mean, they were threatening. They were going to put this guy in jail over this, and they fined him like $150,000 or maybe more, and like. It was a really big deal.
Well, I got hit because you can subcontract people, but you can't make them wear uniforms. Yeah. So that's why I got hit.
Yeah, that's
because
the thing.
So that's where that was the whole like piece of it is had I not had people in uniforms, it wouldn't have been an issue.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like in especially it's a big thing in the roofing industry is, all these salesmen are the 1099 or W-2. Yeah. Well, the question is. Are they? There's a couple questions. Are you eligible to go work for somebody else at any given time? Right. And if you're a roof salesman for XYZ Roofing, is ABC Roofing going to let you? Could you go sell a roof for ABC Roofing and XYZ Roofing not get mad? Yeah. Absolutely. Yes, they're going to get pissed. Yeah. So there's rule broken number one. Do you ever have to show up somewhere on time every day? Yes, you do. Yeah. And do you wear their uniform? Yeah. And yes, and that's the answer is yes. And all these roofing companies they try to get around that by making everybody 1099 just to try to get out of paying payroll taxes. Right. Like when I first started my business, I did the same thing. I was just writing everybody a check, for like a year. Yeah. Maybe a little bit longer than that. Just every week, just your salary's $1,000. Here, pay you $1,000. Yeah. And so I remember when we first switched to payroll, I knew nothing about any of this stuff. Yeah. So we switched to payroll, and I think at the time our payroll was like $10,000 a week or something like that. That's what I was paying like all of my employees and everybody on a regular basis. And then that Monday, I remember asking my bookkeeper at the time, how much was payroll last week? And she was like, $12,500 or something like that. I was like, hold on a second. We've been paying like $10,000, $9,000 a week for what happened? She was like, payroll taxes. I was like, the fuck are payroll taxes? That's where I learned I gotta pay the government to pay you. Yeah. And I was like, golly, and that was a big kick in the butt. Yeah. To learn that, you have to pay your federal withholding and your Social Security and all this stuff, but I gotta pay as a business have to pay some of that too. Right. So that was a big.
See, that didn't bother me as I obviously would just adjust my costing to make sure that we stayed in that 25-30% labor cost. But I will say this, at one point with Ultimate Foods, I remember 1 month or 1 week, I was looking at our numbers. I'm like, oh my gosh, because there's a couple of months where people don't care about eating healthy. Yeah. And so those few months you have to be, it's really in winter. It's once November, December hit, people are just out of it. Yeah. So, but needless to say, I was a little back on it was like a Monday and I'm looking and I'm like, man, I'm not going to have enough money for payroll this week. And I don't have anybody I can go to and borrow, 10, 15 grand from. So I came up with the gift card membership. So I was like, hey, we'll sell you a $1,000 gift card for $900. And so it's 10% off, and I hit the sales floor that day. And I think within the first, maybe, I don't know, before lunchtime hit, I had like 7 of them sold.
Really?
Because people were like, man, I come here, I buy this every single week. I'll use this thing up in 5 or 6 weeks for sure.
So you needed to make payroll,
Right?
and you were not going to make payroll. You had
Yeah.
no idea what to do, and you said, "I'm gonna sell a gift card, a 10% off gift card, because I need to raise money for tomorrow."
Well, I needed the money by Thursday, essentially
Yeah.
Thursday morning at 7 a.m. when everything hits. So I needed to make sure that I had all the money deposited by Wednesday. So I'm like, I have two days to get this thing going. But by the end of that Monday, I had it done. And then that became a huge piece of the business, was selling these $1,000 loadable cards, meal cards. We just called them meal cards.
That is gangster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was pretty proud of myself on that
Yeah,
one.
that
and we
is-
created a whole campaign after that. I'm like, this
Yeah.
is it. Like, we're selling the heck out of these things.
Yeah.
Because then, too, it's like the redemption rate, our hit redemption rate was pretty strong. Usually, I think on gift cards, it's about 60%.
Yeah.
But ours was about 80%. But I
Yeah.
mean, so even I knocked down that 10%,
Yeah.
I was still making,
I mean, businesses make millions of dollars every year of unused.
Well, so I'm
gift
saying
cards.
it's usually redemption rate's like
Yeah.
60%. So
Hey,
business
Ryan,
making 40% on that.
Look up how much money Walmart profits every year on unused gift cards.
Ugh.
So this is going to be a crazy number, but yeah, that's making it happen.
Right.
And
that's
Yeah.
where you either sink or swim.
Yeah.
You figure it out. And there was the same thing with the fights. There were times in the fights where I was just like, man, I gotta
It's not public information.
figure this thing
not,
out.
yeah. Oh,
I guarantee you they make a ton.
oh, it's got to be a couple hundred million a year. I guarantee
sure.
in unused gift cards.
Yeah.
On a company that big, but yeah, that was so you built Ultimate Foods up, got a 5, and you get. Do you get approached to buy for the guy?
Yeah,
to buy
so
Ultimate Foods, or do
people
you put
approach
it
me
up?
all the time to buy it, and they're like, "You want to sell Ultimate Foods?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure. Send me an offer." I mean, I still get people like that today. Like, "You want to sell your house?" I'm like, "Send me an offer." Like,
Yeah.
you tell me. I'm like, "Hang
No.
on." Like, dude, you're
Yeah.
calling me.
I do also,
So, I literally just was getting back from New York from doing the whole public offering with V3 Fights. I mean, I was stepping off the plane, and someone called me up, and I listened to the voicemail. I was like, "Hey, this is Brown Dudley. I'm interested in purchasing. It's if you're interested in selling Ultimate Foods." I was like, "Who's this guy?" So I looked him up. I'm like, "Oh shit, this is it's a real deal thing."
Yeah.
So, so that was it. But I'd already did my due diligence, because when I took V3 public, we, had to do the SEC audit. So the same way all that stuff was structured, I already started structuring Ultimate Foods for it.
Yeah.
I started filing everything that exact same way. So, because my thought was, when I get to 10 locations, when I get to Nashville and have Jackson, this I'm going to go hard. I'm probably trying to sell this thing.
Yeah.
So needless to say, he called, we went through it, and within 3 months it was sold.
Yeah. So
2 companies sold within 3 months apart, like cash heavy, like,
Yeah.
had a bunch in the stock market. Like, I was just on cloud 9.
Yeah. So you've successfully built and exited 2 companies.
Yeah.
You got a bunch of cash. Like, what's going through your head? Like, what was the next move for you?
That was it. So it's funny, because some people come to me like, "What are you going to do next? What are you going to do next?" And I remember kind of feeling a little overwhelmed. I'm like, "Man, can I not just enjoy this for a second?"
Yeah.
And but at the same time too, there's a lot of pressure on myself of like, what am I going to do next?
Yeah. So as far, I just now thought of this, but like I don't know if you realize this, but like I called you and was hinting at the same thing. And remember I called you and I was out talking about business, and you just exited and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And remember, you said you need to call Justin Hamlet. He's kind of in the same boat. Because I don't know if Justin had came to you about the same thing, but
About what thing?
About starting a business. Remember, I wanted to start my construction company. And I was like, man, you had just exited both those companies and they didn't have nothing going on. I was like, man, because I'd always wanted to start a company, but I didn't have any money.
You called me after your fall apart with Justin Hamlet.
No. This was way before that.
Okay.
I called you to talk business about starting a company, and you just talked about Justin. Me and him had both kind of exited, and that's where I got the idea well, I call, Justin, I didn't know anything about business. And I was like,
Yeah.
Justin ran restaurants and he ran this. He knows a little bit about business. So that's when I called him.
Yeah.
And because it was your idea. Or,
Yeah.
or I don't know if it was your idea, but our conversation.
Well, I'm sorry. I don't think that was a good idea for you.
Hey,
right? It all worked out.
It worked out. Me and Justin are cool now. We talk every now and then. So it's all.
Yeah. I remember
works
you
out.
called me afterwards and you were like, man, they're screwing me. Da, da, da. And you want to do a business with me? And I was like, I'll give you a little piece of advice.
Yeah. What'd
You
you
don't want a
say?
fucking partner. Only
Yeah.
time you want to, I heard this from someone else. Only time you want a business partner, only time you want a partner is when you're in the
Yeah.
shit eating contest.
Yeah.
That's it.
And I did that for a long time.
Yeah.
I didn't want a partner, and I kind of built this thing up, got it positioned, but then, man, I just, I do have a partner now.
Yeah.
and I think I made a good decision on
Well,
it. 'Cause
but you did it in a
Yeah.
very organic way. You
Yeah.
didn't just go out fishing for one. You
Yeah.
let one
he
come
came
to you, and
he
it
kind of
worked
came
all out.
Exactly. He came to me, and now we're inseparable. We have, I think, maybe starting a business with from the ground up with the partners, maybe.
I mean, I still to this day, I think it's really good to have partnerships. You just have to have really good boundaries with
Yeah.
it, and it's tough, man, because at the end of the day, like any relationship, whether it's a marriage or whether it's a business partnership,
It can fail.
there's a lot of work that has to go into it,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of work that has to go into
Yeah.
it to keep it healthy.
Yeah. So what advice would you give to anybody like that, like, or looking to build something to sell it? Like, what's like step, 1, 5, and 10 of like making sure these are able to be sellable?
Well, I think, first and foremost, clean your books up.
Yeah.
And if you are, moving some stuff around, just make sure that you can tell a story about how it's moving around.
Yeah.
Because no one's going to keep their stuff to the T.
Yeah.
So, but whenever you're going to sell it, you need to be able to,
Yeah.
talk about what's going on.
Yeah. So,
And I with Ultimate Foods, I kind of wish that I was a little more lax on how I was doing it. Because I remember when I was talking about selling Ultimate Foods, when we were going through the due diligence of it, he was like, do you have anything that you're kind of running through the business? I'm like, no, this is everything.
Yeah,
It's kosher. Like it is 100% it.
yeah.
And, I was like, there's a few times I go out to eat maybe, but other than that, like I wouldn't, a lot of my stuff was going through, because I was with Alliance MMA still too. So all that stuff was running through through the publicly traded company. So, but there's probably a lot of loopholes that I didn't utilize that I probably could have, because our tax system is 100% set up for small businesses.
Yeah. You just got to know how to use it.
Got to know how to use it.
Yeah, you got to work. You got to work.
And it's
the
hard
system.
too, because there's not enough accountants out here that tell you how to manage your money versus they just bookkeep for you.
Yeah, like my new accountant, he's amazing. I've known him for a long time, but we decided, we switched over to him here in the last couple of months, and my old accountant was fucking me.
Yeah,
Man, like
Looks
so
like they
bad.
just-
like
they just
like
go
I'm
in-
probably about to have to sue him.
Yeah.
That's how bad he was fucking me. He started saying, your accountant is supposed to be a forecaster, not a historian.
right.
And your accountant is supposed to guide you on how to spend and manage your money,
Right.
and keep your books the right way to and find out what your goal is. Like, do you want to show a lot of profit? Do you not want to show a lot of profit?
Right.
Do you want to be able to buy a bunch of assets? Like, what do you want to do with your money, and guide you on, not let you just run your business and then at the end of the year say, well, I need this paper, so I can file your taxes for you.
Right.
And that's what my old accountant was doing for me. And now, like, I'm probably going to have to sue him because he messed up a lot of shit. And now Brian's uncovering it all. And now we're going to have to, I'm not in any tax trouble or anything like that, but there's a lot of stuff that, like, could have been done way different, and he didn't execute on it
Right.
at all. And now, I didn't benefit from a lot of stuff. So
Yeah.
we're having to.
And that's the tough part, man. And
Yeah.
and you're just paying taxes on taxes.
Yeah.
You buy a piece of equipment that you pay taxes on, and then every year you have to pay taxes on that equipment that you already own.
Yeah. I remember I remember there was a tax I got in the mail when I worked in my old building. You have to pay taxes on all the, like, I had to pay them a tax based on what their opinion was of all the stuff that I was storing in my building.
Well, the one thing that always tripped me out on taxes, on one that I thought was a funny tax, was signage tax. because
Oh, yeah.
a lot of Ultimate Foods, I
Oh, yeah,
have
you got- yeah, you got
different
it.
advertisements. I saw like Taco Bell does great advertisements on that side. I'm like, do what Taco Bell does.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, at one point I did get hit with a cease and desist from McDonald's. One of the taglines I put up was "Happy Meals that won't supersize you."
Oh,
And,
wow.
So got hit with
We
that.
got there too. You got the big dogs' attention.
I mean, it was pretty
Those- those-
exciting. As a PR guy, I was like, man, this is great. Hopefully they'll come at me. You know, it's a big company that's selling unhealthy food coming after a little mom and pop healthy food store.
Yeah,
But
and they got
I
money to-
definitely took it off. I stopped using the whole.
Yeah.
They sent the cease and desist. I still have it, and
I'll just frame that, put them on the wall.
I know, I need
That's
to.
good. So how old's your daughter?
Just turned 12.
Yeah. So when was she? What? So she was born in 2013.
Yes, I started Ultimate Foods when she was born.
Yeah. So so having her, did that, becoming a dad, did that change? I mean, did that change?
Well, I was already doing the fights,
Yeah.
and I just felt like at that time I just moved back to Memphis. So it was
Yeah.
one of those things too where it's like, man, if I'm going to do it, now's the time to go ahead
Yeah.
and do it. So
But how did that change did that change the way, like, having somebody else, like, having something so innocent, like, and having them, they're with you, they rely on you for everything. Did that change, like, maybe how you wanted to, how you spent your time on your businesses and being able to, like, where you wanted to take it to?
that probably was what makes me hesitant today to start a business.
Yeah.
I'm still a partner in Cage Fury Fighting,
Yeah.
and we do fights, all across the East Coast for the most part. But, you only have 100%, right?
Yeah.
So, and one of my favorite books is Relentless, and it talks
read
about,
it.
there's a few things that you can, you can't give your all in every aspect of your life.
Yeah.
And when you're in business, when you give your all, you're in it. And
Yeah.
I've always been good about doing a balance and stuff, but when I'm given a task or a problem to solve, like,
Yeah.
I cannot sleep until
Yeah.
I have my head wrapped around it.
Yeah.
And in business, it's like that every day.
Yeah.
So I would say that's probably one of the things that makes me a little hesitant
Yeah.
to go ahead and start up a new one right now, just
Yeah.
because I'm like, man. But at the same time, too, it's like, dude, I'd like to build something
Yeah.
that when they turn, when my kids turn 15, 16, they can come work for me.
Yeah.
Plus all the tax advantages now that I'm hearing about, you can like pay your kids so much every year.
Yeah.
They can take that money and pay for their private school.
Yeah. But do you think that, like, you've made, like, a lot, like, whatever the business you wanted to build, do you think, like, you've learned a lot of those lessons and learned a lot of those, mistakes and pros? Like, you think you're how old are you, 40?
Yeah, 44.
Yeah. So you're 44, and, like, so you've made a lot of mistakes. You've learned a lot of lessons. So I think you'd have a head start on most.
Oh, 100%.
On most entrepreneurs.
I just have to find something that I like,
Yeah.
and I think that's the big thing is like, I like the fights. I like the healthy food content. I like the hospitality piece of both of those industries. So I really enjoy, taking care of people, and the fights was a very fun, entertaining piece. The food piece was a very fun, like, way of taking care of somebody and seeing their change and, what impact that has on their life. So, I battle back and forth with it because even coming into this show, I was a little nervous because, like, man, he's going to ask me about